Been watching ball with my big old brain and think the tape needs some explaining. Studying the stats to understand it. Hey, yo. Talk data to me. Talk data to me.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to episode 18 of Talk Data to Me, and I am very honored to have one of my best fantasy football friends, one of my good friends, period, man. That's what this industry does for you. A lot of good people in it from the fantasy football. Brian Drake joining the show.
All right, move aside. All across the fantasy universe, welcome one and all back to, well, it's not really the fantasy football hustle, but for today it is. Talk Data to Me. We're flipping it on its head and bringing back our old school podcast. A lot of people probably don't know this, Dwain, but you and I got started in this podcast game. We did a 5-year run of a show called the Fantasy Football Hustle, which was nominated by the FSWA for Podcast of the Year. And we lost, I don't know, some upstart podcast by JJ Zachariason and the Fantasy Footballers, but we had a damn good time doing it, man. And from there really helped springboard you and I into these incredible roles that we have now. Well, I sit in my basement and write, random articles. You're like a big, huge star I get to see on my television on Fantasy Life. So congratulations.
Hey, as far as anyone out there is concerned, if you write about fantasy football, Drake, you live in a basement, but the only other qualifier is that it's your mom's basement. It's not your actual own basement where you also have, a wife and kids and a family and a life, So yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. And guys, we have a really great topic for you today. We put out a thread yesterday on Twitter looking at all the big start-sit decisions that you guys have. And essentially, we combed through all of those responses, and we got the names that were mentioned the most. And those are the players we're going to talk about today. But the other really cool thing that we're going to talk about here with this, Drake, is just really the process. What kind of process you use when you're making these start-sit decisions. And what are the kind of things that may lean you one way or another? And sometimes it might even just be your gut. And guys, fantasy football, it's your team. You get to make the call. And guess what, man? In a one-game sample, absolutely anything can happen. And so we're going to talk about the process we use. We're going to hit the players you guys gave us. I think it's going to be a super fun show. We got about 22 names we're going to try to get to. We'll see. We may end up more like at 15 or 16. We're going to keep it to 60 minutes. But I thought last night's game, Drake, was a great example of what happens with this stuff. Let's take Matthew Stafford, for example. Matthew Stafford, the last 2 weeks in my ranks, I had him in the top 3 quarterbacks. You got the matchup. The Rams are running hot. Everything's going great. This week, we're like, okay, we don't have Davante Adams. That's been a huge part of the success for the Rams down inside the 10-yard line this year. Davante Adams has been an absolute beast, so you don't have one of your key touchdown makers. You're playing against the Seahawks defense that's been really good, especially over the last 6 weeks, and I mean outlier good. They have been really good against opposing passers, and they played well against Stafford in the last game. You got the potential of this weather that, yes, it got overblown, guys, and Kevin Roth over at Roto Grinders does a great job of talking about the implications. So does our own Chris Allen over here at Fantasy Life. So those are two really good guys to watch with the weather, because ultimately it gets overblown much of the time. But there was this chance for potential bad weather as well. So you got weather, you got a matchup. You don't have Davante Adams. What does Matthew Stafford do? He has his best fantasy season of the week of the year. 30.7 fantasy points last night. Might be the number one fantasy quarterback on the slate this week. And you had all these things actually stacked against him. And then on the flip side of that, you have Colby Parkinson. You're like, oh man, Davante Adams, Colby Parkinson's, he's got a larger role, and he had it again last night, guys. He was over that 65% route participation rate. He is the lead of those 3 tight ends they have with Tyler Higbee, on IR right now, and the Rams use their 13 personnel all the time. Parkinson had a few targets he didn't catch, but he comes up empty, man. Gives you under 5 fantasy points last night. So a guy that was in most rankers top 12. So even though we have this process that we follow, and it's a process that a lot of times we're using, Drake, that's basically look, man, if you had to make this decision 10,000 times, this is the way you would make it. But in any one game, anything can happen. And we saw that go 2 different ways last night for Stafford and Parkinson.
And you do a great job in your writing and on these shows talking about range of outcomes. And really in fantasy football, that's what we need to accept. And I get people all the time hit me up on Twitter. They're, Drake, should I start this guy or this guy? And I love what you said about use your gut, because it is your team. And when I look at the Rams, if someone was to say to me, I want to start Stafford or blank, I know Stafford's not going to run. So he needs to, if he's going to get there, he's going to have to do it through massive yardage and touchdowns, which he did last night, 457 and 3. But that's in his range of outcomes. He's not really ever going to have these weeks where he throws for like a $150 and like 1 touchdown. The offense is too good. The play caller is too good. So you talk about what are our processes that go into making these decisions? Well, he's got the best play caller in football. He's got arguably the best wide receiver in football. The running game is fine. It's nothing that, they're going to lean on so much to like take over the game. So Matt Stafford is somebody who I'm probably never going to pull from a lineup unless it's, I mean, somehow I have like Josh Allen on this team as well. And I just stumbled into Stafford, but I did make the call of Colby Parkinson in my leagues where I'm in the semifinals. And you know what? I don't feel bad about it because you could look at the process. Dwain, it was right. He was like the tight end 4 over the last month. He's getting all this red zone usage. I mean, who else are we going to put in over him? Our buddy John Daigle had a great tweet the other night, and he goes, when it comes to all of these tight ends, you need him to score really to come through. Otherwise, it's, 2 for 30. And what did Parkinson have? He had 2 for 20. So that's what happened. He didn't score, so he didn't come through. And I'm fine with that because my other options were either Brenton Strange, who with all of the newfound toys in Jacksonville hasn't getting it done, or Tyler Warren. So what's my process there? Phil Rivers, who's getting the ball out in a blink of an eye, and they're barely throwing a ball down the field. So let me get the guy who I think has the best chance to score. And that was Parkinson.
If I told you that Matthew Stafford was going to throw for, over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you knew that going into the game, you would probably think that Colby Parkinson was going to give you 15 fantasy points.
Of course. It didn't help that I also started Jason Myers in the game, and my opponent had JSN. So, I mean, literally, I'm content with the fact now that I no longer have to set a lineup in this league because I'm probably done after tonight. But yeah, I'm okay with it, knowing that the process was right in terms of it's a guy getting usage, getting end zone looks at a position like tight end. That's all you can ask for if you're not rolling out Trey McBride, or even, I guess, on a lower level, like Brock Bowers, because what are we looking for at that position? Who's got a pulse? Who could maybe cross into the end zone? And nobody's been better over the last month than Parkinson.
Yeah, I mean, and all you can do is try to follow the latest trends and data. One thing I will say, though, that does happen, Drake, as we see, there are these seasons within the season, right? One thing we know about Colby Parkinson historically is he's really not a very good fantasy player.
Yeah,
so I do think that you could make an argument that he got a little bit pushed up, and I had his utilization up here on the screen here just a second ago. But to your point, last night was his highest route participation rate of the year. So if you were betting on him having the playing time and a high scoring offense, and to Daigle's point, you want the guys that can potentially score touchdowns, he should have been a low end tight end 1 period, right? You maybe didn't need to get cute with it, but once you get past the top, especially at tight end, man, you get past the top 5 or 6, you just kind of got to make a bet and go with it. But I have a question for you before we get started. We're going to talk some more about the process that you were just you were mentioning. Hey, the process was right. We're going to talk about our process, but who is the one player that you think the industry is ranking too high that is a trap in week 16? And you can't say Colby Parkinson.
No, but I will bring up another player on that same team of mine. And I was looking through a couple of different sites to see where they had him ranked, and it's Bucky Irving. We here at Fantasy Points have him at running back 8, Fantasy Pros, where I do some work for those guys as well. We have him, I believe he's at RB 10. So here's the problem for me. My guy, Sean Tucker, shout out to Syracuse, is bogarting all the goal line work. So, Dwain, I used your own data for this. Sean Tucker has all of the snaps inside the 5 since week 13. So Irving's not getting any long down and distance snaps. Those are going to Rachaad White, who in that same span has 82% of the long down and distance snaps. And Irving's not playing in the 2-minute. So I'm worried that we've got a million mouths to feed with multiple running backs. Now we've got back Big Mike. Godwin's back healthy. We've got McMillan's now back. There's too many mouths to feed in this offense. And Baker, healthy or not, doesn't look like he's playing all that great. So despite being what could be a really good matchup against Carolina, who allows the 9th most fantasy points to running backs, I fear, though, Dwain, without him breaking off a touchdown, maybe that's going to have to be from 20 yards out. We're not going to see the output with Bucky Irving that's going to help us get out of our fantasy semifinal.
Yeah, I think it's a great call out. I think the challenge with Bucky Irving is he still plays in a good offense, and we know he's a really good player. So, like, how much do you let that weight in? But to your point, like, I've got the utilization report up for you guys in the game log view. You guys can all see this over at fantasylife.com, but you can see what Drake is talking about here. We've got Bucky Irving on these 3 games since he's been back. The 2-minute offense, right, really has not been a factor in it. He was a little bit in week 14, but mostly that's going to Rashad White. And then if you look at what Drake's talking about with these carries inside the 5-yard line, he doesn't have any, because if I scroll down here to Mr. Sean Tucker over that period, he's got all of them. And that is a role that Sean Tucker's really good at. And to your point, the other thing that I'll show here is, like, when we go over to our player projections. So this is something that, guys, I'm using a lot of the utilization data, the team totals, all that kind of stuff. And we use Matthew Friedman's betting model, which is a little bit different than odds makers. A lot of things different go into it, but you'll notice where his median projection is 12.6, running back 21. And so I still have him in my top 12 in my rankings because I know Bucky Irving's a really good player, but he is essentially playing like a Kenneth Walker role now.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, man, good luck between the 20s. But once you get us down there, like, we're going to put Charbonnet or some other dude on the field, even though, like, you look really good. So I think Bucky Irving's a really good call out. I would say the one thing, though, Drake, and I'll ask you here, I'll put you a little bit on the spot, because, you know, these are the questions that you get when you say something like this on a show like that, on like what we're doing. You know, so I'm the lowest ranker. I'm at 12 on Bucky Irving. We got Ian at 10, Friedman at 11. 12, Waz is with me. Kendall's at 10. You know, we've moved him down. He was like running back 6 the last 2 weeks heading into those weeks. So we've clearly moved him down, not all the way down to where the projection has him. And that's where projections and rankings can come out a little bit different. I'm the most projection centric in my rankings, probably because I'm doing the projections, you know, for Fantasy Life, and I'm studying this stuff. But I think the question you have to then ask yourself is, okay, like, are you really willing? Would you rather start some of these other players below him? Because that's what people then ask. Like, would you rather start Trevion Henderson? Would you rather start Javonte Williams? Kyron's already played. You got RJ Harvey. Any of those names would you be willing to start over Bucky Irving?
Yeah, I mean, I would play Trevion Henderson. I mean, I'm looking at him, you know, on my site, and I've got him. He's down to 21. I'd play Trevion Henderson over Bucky Irving at this point. The explosiveness, just by the fact that he could break off. I mean, so could Bucky Irving, but the fact that Trevion Henderson is so shot out of a cannon, and this offense doesn't have any playmakers on the outside, and they're going to need something to win this game, especially reeling off that, you know, loss with Buffalo. I would play Trevion Henderson over him. RJ Harvey, by the way, with this rib injury, playing against a Jacksonville team who folks keep sleeping on Jacksonville. Jacksonville's one of the best rush defenses in the NFL. And I'm not exactly sure that Harvey's going to go in there and just dominate this game. I don't trust the Sean Payton offense anyways. Javonte against the Chargers. Javonte's fine, but he's, again, he may be a little too touchdown heavy. I know you're a big Cowboys fan. So I think I'd play Bucky over Javonte. I think Bucky and Harvey is a complete toss-up, and I would lean Trevion over Irving if I had the two on my roster.
And I do think it's a close call. Trevion runs into some of the same issues as Irving, but he doesn't get completely boxed out inside the 5. They're both big-time playmakers. They both are not on the field and passing downs. Ramondre's getting all that work lately. Ramondre Stevenson had a 67% snap share for some reason last week. I don't really know why. That's what Mike Vrabel continues to do with their offense. So they're both in part-time roles, and they're both big playmakers. So, I think it's a coin flip between the two players, but I wouldn't blame anyone. Here's the thing. With Trevion, you do have the demonstrated ceiling, right, of these 30-point games. We haven't had that yet from Bucky. So I think that's a really good call out from you. I think that's a great opening one. And also it's a really good transition really just into process. And so how we go about making these decisions. And here's what I'm going to say, guys. Making these close decisions, it's the hardest thing in fantasy football. So the way I really look at it, Drake, is I really try to get players into tiers, and I really do lean into projections a lot for that. And the way I think about this is if you had to make this decision 10,000 times based on the data we have, what would be the right decision? And so I've studied all this stuff, like what correlates the most to scoring the next week, rolling 4 over rolling 4. Is it the player's role? Is it their production? Is it the matchup they have? Is it, the team, the game environment? So the team total and the Vegas odds. Are you a dog? Are you a favorite? And all those things do matter. But what I will say is player production is still the number one factor. So we want good players in our fantasy lineup, preferably from good teams. But I'll just say this, like once you get them into a tier and you have 8 or 9 guys, sometimes the tier can be that large. Sometimes it might be a 3 or 4 player tier. But honestly, guys, it really can go any way. And that is really where, like, you following your gut and what you think, for your lineup and which player you like the most, because in a 1-game sample, what we're saying, if they're all projected or ranked really close to one another, is it really could be any of them.
Yeah,
and, man, so many of the start sit questions I get are literally players, and they'll give me 3 names. I got to start one, and I go look at my ranks and projections, and they're back to back to back. They're always right there together.
Always happens, man.
And so I'll tell people, I'll be like, hey, I have, whatever, RJ Harvey ranked 1 spot ahead. But ultimately, man, what I'm telling you with the way I have them ranked and projected is like, it really can go either way. Based on the research and everything I've done, like they're the same. They really are a coin flip. So
and people don't want to hear that. So
no,
whenever people ask me a question, I like, especially online, I'll get like Facebook messages from friends and they go, what do you think of this guy against this guy? And instead of just saying, play Mike Evans, I'll always say like, well, and then I kind of like write a little story so that I can show you, it's not me playing both sides. It's here's the thought process behind both players. Pick the guy you like the best. Like if you just want the magic potion and say, all right, am I playing Michael Carter this week or am I playing Audric Estime? Okay, yeah, I can just tell you which guy you want, but how about we go into the process of why I actually like that guy, and I can go into a little bit of my process, how my week goes. So when it starts all on Mondays, when I write my defensive streamers article, that gets me looking at points against for all of these teams. You're looking at injuries, you're looking at how teams are performing against certain positions. So that gets my ball kind of rolling right there. Then during the week, I write a DFS article. I write a start sit article. So now I'm looking at
and where can people find all these, Drake?
So
we forgot to plug you right away.
Oh yeah, sorry about all that. So at Drake Fantasy, Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok. I do a TikTok live stream for Fantasy Pros. I'm like the most boomer guy out there. Oh Lord! But here's the problem. Hey, TikTok, whatever dark web conglomerate owns TikTok, can you help me out with Mac so I can actually do this on my Mac with their Creator Studio? Because I have my phone like set up right here, okay, on the screen. It's like this. I look like such a dope. So I've got my phone here because that's where I'm scrolling, but I'm also looking behind it to see everything on all of my screens. It's awful. But so that my defensive streamer article is at Fantasy Points. My DFS article is at Sports Kita. Then I put out a couple of videos at Fantasy Pros. And then I do a long form kind of fun article over at The Huddle. So through all of these, and I love looking at DFS because I don't think there's a segment of the fantasy population that gets more in the weeds than DFS. And through some of the pods I listen to throughout the week, that's when you can really get into the minutia, I believe, of like just player takes and their matchup. And you can read some great articles. I know at Fantasy Points, we got, my guy Joe Dolan does the wide receiver cornerback matchup. And there's so many great things. That's how my process really gets going. So that when I get to Saturday and I've got to put these lineups together, I've got from how a player is playing against a certain defense to how that defense is playing to how the matchups look to what the projections across multiple sites are telling me. And then I can kind of go with my gut from there on who's playing well at this certain time. And again, what do you always say, Dwain? Range of outcomes. And Matthew Berry, who I know, obviously his name's on this site, he said that for his entire career. It's what do you really think's going to happen here? Like, could this X happen? Could Y happen? Let's kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And that's what fantasy players need to know. Like, could Evan Hull have a monster week that no one's thinking about? Sure. Or is he more likely to have 8 carries for 25 yards and, you're going to shoot yourself in the head for having in your lineup? That's probably more in the line of what's going to happen. So just be aware and be ready for it. And don't go killing your fantasy analyst who you send a Twitter message to. Thank you, by the way. So Dwain tweets out, and I've always joked with Dwain about his Twitter following. And I remember I knew you when you had 200 Twitter followers. Now you've got like 100,000.
You tweet when I had like 5.
Maybe where you're tweeting into the ethos. And I was like the one person that saw it. Somehow my algorithm between girls.
There wasn't an
in bikinis
algorithm like this back then. There was actually stuff you wanted to see in your Twitter feed back then, unlike now. Now you have to curate it daily.
It's awful. But so you tweet out, hey, give us a start-sit question for the show. It nukes my timeline for 2 days. My notifications just never stop going off. Like I had Adam Schefter on a show once, and that's a question I wanted to ask him. And you're in, sort of that stratosphere, I guess I could say, of
that stratosphere,
not of Schefter, but you know what I mean? Of like when you tweet something out, you almost just have to turn your phone off at that point because it just goes bananas where you can't even look at things because it's nonstop. You could tweet out, my family was just killed in a horrific fire. And someone would say, I'm sorry to hear that. Who should I start? Chase Brown or Derrick Henry? That's exactly how it's going to go on Twitter. You might not even get the sorry about your family. You might just get,
just who do I start?
Who do I start? The services are tomorrow. Do you have time before then to do a pod? That's what it'll be.
Yeah. But look, it's the price like that to do this, and it's fine. Like, and I'll answer some of those sometimes. Sometimes I don't always have time, and we're trying to get other things done and get other content out and update projections and rankings. So, but yeah, look, I want to say I appreciate all you guys that follow us out there. I appreciate all the engagement. I'm sorry for the answers that I don't get to. I try to answer DMs as well on Twitter, do as many as I can, but yes, it does sometimes become overwhelming, Drake. So I thought you hit on a lot of good stuff there, with like your process and how you think about it. And we're going to start jumping into some players here, but I just really quickly wanted to say, one other note I wanted to make about your process, guys, is it's mostly about outliers. Like the way the model for our projection model, and based on the research that I've done, I would say 80% of the defensive matchups you don't even need to write about. You should just be worried about what the player's been doing, what their role has been. Are they a good player, et cetera? Like, are there changes in the offense, that kind of stuff? Because it's really the really hard defenses and the really easy defenses to play that ultimately end up being a factor, like in these things. And
you're 100% right.
Because sometimes I'll read these articles and I'm like, man, like this, and it's, look, everybody, you do you, but I'll read articles and I'm like, man, there's like 100 words about the defense they're playing, and it's the number 16 defense. Like, it's just a middle of the range defense. It's not good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just normal.
Whenever
the thing we
that,
care about is, you don't want to play the really tough ones. Yeah. You just stop.
Whenever I go through and I'm looking at defenses, and I'll use, stats either from a bazillion different sites that I go to. If all I'm looking at is like the top 5 to 7 or the bottom 5, if the team that I'm looking for that they're playing against isn't in there, I don't care, because you're just a middle of the pack, whatever defense. That's why when I brought up the Jaguars, this week, the Jaguars are really good against running backs. Like, they haven't even allowed 1,000 yards yet on the season on the ground. So, I mean, that's something that jumps out to me when I see that. If it's just a middle of the lane team, you're just like, okay, whatever. They give up 130 yards on the ground. Great. Like, let's just go.
Well, let's talk some quarterbacks. We will get to the running backs. Let's talk about Jacoby Brissett. This name came up a lot yesterday. Look, he's the quarterback 4, Brian, since taking over as the starting quarterback for the Cardinals.
Amazing.
Going back in week 6, it's nothing this man has ever done in his career. He had a nice season with Cleveland a couple of years ago. It wasn't anybody that we ever thought, oh my God, we would be benching a Joe Burrow or potentially a Dak Prescott, a Lamar Jackson for. But I mean, 20.7 fantasy points per game. His worst game over that stretch is 17.4 fantasy points. And he just beat up the Denver Broncos the week before that, beat up on the Rams. So he's shown that he can actually do this against good defenses. And the big thing I think really here, like, is the Cardinals have just decided we're just going to throw the ball all the time. Like, so since he took over, 6% drop back rate over expected, that leads the league over that stretch. Over the last 5 games, 10% drop back rate over expected. This team's dropped back to throw the ball 78% of the time. Almost 80% of their plays have been pass plays over the last 5 weeks. And he's playing well. You're potentially getting Marvin Harrison back. And man, Michael Wilson, like, talk about like an out of nowhere, a player that had done nothing for his entire career and had multiple opportunities, guys, in offenses that needed him to be good. Now, maybe he wasn't ready for that in his rookie year. And the second year, last year, you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. So, things, you got to try to feed your early round pick. But Jacoby Brissett, man, like, he projects for 18.7 fantasy points. Had a lot of people asking about Jacoby in the Twitter thread. And I'll just say, like, man, he's a player where I just think we have a big enough sample at this point that, like, we just have to acknowledge what it is. And so I'm pulling up my ranks over here. I've got Jacoby as my QB4 this week. I have him ahead of Lamar Jackson. I have him ahead of Joe Burrow. I've got him ahead of Dak Prescott, who's got an outlier bad matchup against the Chargers. The Chargers have given up a -4 fantasy boost points per game. I know it sounds weird when we say fantasy point boost, guys, but just think of it as adjusted fantasy points allowed. It just basically looks at, here are all the quarterbacks the Chargers have played. This is what they normally average. How much do the Chargers give up over or under versus the quarterbacks that they've had to play against? And it's a -4. They've been really good against passing games. So what are your thoughts on Jacoby Brissett? Ian's got him at 5. Friedman a little more skeptical. Friedman, we call him the wet blanket. But I will point out, Friedman, I think, had he had Stafford all the way down at 18 last night. So way to go, Friedman. And then you got Kendall sitting there at 5, along with me and Ian. And then you got Waz, who is a leader in these Fantasy Pro competitions every week. He's sitting here at 10. What are your thoughts on Jacoby Brissett? Because that was one of the most asked about quarterbacks in our thread yesterday. Do I start Jacoby Brissett over Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Drake May? These were all names that I got. Dak Prescott. These were players that were names that were thrown out.
Yeah, and I actually have this exact dilemma in a couple of leagues with Burrow and Brissett. And at this time, I have Burrow in, but doing my research throughout the week, I'm leaning a little more towards Brissett because I think he's safe. When you look at his 9 starts, 8 of them with at least 250 yards. The one that wasn't, 249. All right. You mentioned all the dropbacks. His defense stinks. He's always playing from behind. I think he was down like 17-0 before he took a snap last week. So you mentioned he's getting Marvin Harrison Jr. back. I've got some notes. My guy Joe Dolan wrote up some great matchup stuff about them. The matchup against Atlanta, though, Atlanta is second in sacks. Brissett's taken 31 in 9 starts. So they blitz at the second highest rates. That said, listen, they just gave up 277 and 2 to a bad Baker Mayfield. The week before that, Darnold got him for 3 touchdowns. So it's not the most dire matchup at all. So let's talk about what I'm looking at with Burrow. Burrow's down a weapon. He doesn't have T. Higgins, okay? But I think anybody who watched those games knows Burrow's kind of just running bad with a little interception luck here. He's still pushing the ball down the field. And whenever you got Jamar Chase, there's a chance for monster numbers. That's why it's so difficult for me to pull Burrow out of a lineup, because he can have these magical days where he throws 3-4 touchdowns. Jamar goes off for 200 yards. You've still got Gesicki and all that stuff. But if you're throwing 4 interceptions in your last 2 games, what are you going to do? Especially against a defense you just torched. And then he comes out in Baltimore, roughs him up and sacks him 3 times, forces 2 picks. So I don't know. I think looking at these two, in my heart, I want to play Burrow, but I think in my head, the safe floor might be just to stick with Jacoby Brissett. But here's the thing. Now, and you guys out there, if you played against players on Thursday night, I'm down to JSN. I'm down because I played Parkinson and Meyer. So if you're in a situation like that and you're going to go through maybe these Saturday games as well, you can see where you stand come Sunday. You might have to adjust a little bit. So let me throw this back at you, Dwain. Which of those 2 players do you think has the most upside to say, all right, crap, I'm down big in my matchup. I got to go nuts. I think that's Joe Burrow. I
think guys. Yes, because Joe Burrow's shown us that he can, he's one of the few guys that it won't surprise if he throws 4 or 5 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
Right. So I do agree with you on kind of the floor. I will say in the projection ceiling, in our projection model, Jacoby projects better on his ceiling as well as his projection. And the one thing Jacoby does that really Joe hasn't been doing, at least this year, is he'll run the ball some. So Jacoby Brissett projects for 14 yards, rushing. Joe Burrow projects for 4. But Burrow is a guy in the past, when he's healthy, we've seen, can also run. You guys saw it on the QB Netflix special, the play that he had last year, right? Can't remember how long the touchdown run was, but Burrow took off. So yeah, I agree with you. Kind of comes down again. They're still close enough, guys. Jacoby Brissett's number 3 in our projections this week at 18.9. Joe Burrow's at 17.6. We're talking about a 1.3 difference. So even though they're separated by 3 spots or 4 spots in the projections and ranks, this is still ultimately one of those your call situations. I do have Brissett ahead, but again, Burrow also a really good option this week. So let's go on to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is another name that was asked about a ton yesterday. I have him at number 6, in the ranks. The challenge with Lamar is it's an interesting one, Drake, because like Lamar is one of the few players that we know, and we've seen it historically. He can throw 40 fantasy points up there.
Yep.
Right. At any moment. He's obviously not the same player right now. Okay. I mean, if we look at Lamar Jackson, over this last stretch of games where he's dealing with the injuries, and he has been looking a little bit healthier, but I mean, Lamar Jackson has averaged 12.1 fantasy points over his last 4 weeks.
Oof.
Like, who would have thought like we would be dealing with that? But that's the reality we're dealing with right now. The Ravens offense is not as good as it has been in the past. I don't know if that's just due to teams catching up, if it's due to Lamar's health, some combination of those things. They don't, they've got Zay Flowers who can do a lot of things, but most of the time they don't let him work downfield, which I don't understand. They did last week. Good things happen. Guys, just turn Zay Flowers loose and just let your offense center around him in the passing game, which they do. He gets the targets, but he doesn't get enough of the deep stuff. And so they struggle to hit the big plays. And that's really been Lamar's key to success. Rushing yards, and then the big plays, because everyone's trying to stop this ground game, and they're still committed to the ground game, but they're just not hitting the big plays right now.
Yeah, and if you look at the last 3 weeks at pass rate over expectation, who's number 2 in that category? Arizona. They're throwing the crap out of the football. Who's bottom 3? Baltimore. So Baltimore, they don't want to throw the football. Lamar doesn't seem to be the same runner that we know and love. So, yeah, I mean, why would we go in that direction and say, all right, let's play Lamar over Brissett when there's so many unknowns with Lamar? And I mean, Lamar to me is never going to have a 300-yard day like Brissett could have. I think we're more in the line of he could throw for 175 to 200. Maybe he throws a couple of touchdowns. To me, it's all about, can he get something done with his legs? And if he doesn't, then you're screwed, because Lamar, I just don't see the big pass volume.
Yeah, the question I think
Lamar.
The question you have to ask yourself on Lamar is, do you think he can come up with a 90-yard rushing day? And that used to be well within his range of outcomes. But he's not running as much. They're not using him on the design run game because he's hurt, and he's not scrambling as often. Like the run-heavy offense isn't the problem. The Ravens have been a run-heavy offense for the last 3 years, but Lamar would hit the big plays, and that would give him the passing touchdown. So to your point, like, he might throw for 220, but he throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns.
Right.
And then when you tack on 70 yards with your legs and you score twice, that's how you get, a 40-point fantasy day. And right now, like, I just think it's hard to believe that it obviously could happen. It's so funny that these are the 2 players we're talking about, because Jacoby Brissett has never done this in his career, but now he's done this since week 6. Lamar Jackson has been one of the best fantasy quarterbacks in the NFL. And even early this year when he was healthy, he was outscoring Josh Allen on points per game, but we haven't seen it now in like 6 weeks. And so we always have to acknowledge that Lamar could suddenly just be healthy this week. But I think it's such a tough choice because they're like 2 polar opposite players. One really great for their career, not playing good now. The other one, not a very good quarterback for their career, but on an absolute heater. So yeah, I think you guys, the way I look at Lamar, I'm okay benching him, and I'm okay with living with it. I know that he could score 40 points, but the reality is he's not the same Lamar Jackson right now.
I'll throw one more thing out there for folks seeing this matchup with the Ravens against the Patriots. The Patriots pass rush stinks. They don't get to the passer, so it's not like he's going to be taking off because he's under pressure and going nuts. They've played, they being the Patriots, have played a couple of good running quarterbacks on the season. They played Josh Allen a week ago. Josh Allen ran for 48 yards 11 times, so that's fine. It's not anything great. Jackson Dart, only 4 for 20. The only guy who really got him for a touchdown was back in week 11, Justin Field, 11 for 67. So I don't think it's the greatest matchup in the world. I think New England's going to realize we want to keep Lamar in the pocket, make him beat us with his arm, kind of an old Belichick, mindset that they used to have. And if Lamar stays in the pocket and has to throw the ball, can he pick apart Christian Gonzalez in this defense? And I'm going to say probably not.
Yeah. And guys, just so you know, like last week, 0% of the design rushing attempts for Lamar. He sits at 9% on the season. He's usually a 17 to 18% kind of guy. Early in his career, he was 20%. So it's not just that Lamar's not healthy. The Ravens are not using him that way right now. So that just says there's something going on with the health. So still a guy that's going to be in most fantasy lineups, but some of you did pick up a Jacoby Brissett. Some of you drafted a Drake May. You're starting Drake May easily over Lamar Jackson this weekend, just based off of the way the run out, would probably look if we played this out 10,000 times with the data that we have right now. All right. One last quarterback really quick. We'll keep it super short, but lots of questions about Jackson Dart. I know the matchup this week for Jackson Dart isn't necessarily ideal. You're playing the Minnesota Vikings, a minus 5.5 fantasy boost, guys. That's that's the toughest actual pass defense here over the last several weeks. One of the toughest on the season, but Jackson Dart does run around, and they used him in the design run game again last week. We had the 1 week where they didn't use him that way, coming back, from the concussion, but he was running again. I'll just say this, look, the matchup isn't great, but I still have Jackson Dart inside my top 12, because if you are a dual threat quarterback and you can run and you can throw, man, it can just negate matchups so much. So I'm not saying Jackson Dart is a must start, but I think he starts over a lot of these other names. Like, people have asked me Jackson Dart versus CJ Stroud getting a play against the Raiders. And Stroud's been on a hot streak too, but Stroud can be very up and down. I'm going to take the guy that I know can run and throw. Now, if you're worried Jackson Dart's going to get hurt in the game, you're worried about losing him to a concussion or something like that, fine. You can use that as your tiebreaker.
That's a big tiebreaker. The guy gets his mail forwarded to that blue tent on the sideline. And, he's got his own room in there with a Don Mattingly poster on the wall. But I'm worried about that with Jackson Dart. I think this is a sneaky shootout game. I wrote this up for DFS. I think J.J. McCarthy can have a good game against his terrible Giants defense. And this could go back and forth a little bit. So it wouldn't shock me if Jackson Dart puts up a big game here against Minnesota. It is in New York, so we'll have to see about the weather. I live in New York right now. It's like 50 degrees and raining outside, so it's not terrible. I don't think we're going to be dealing with any Arctic weather. It was
72 here yesterday, just so. Yeah.
I love when you call me. Dwain will call me on the phone, right? I'll be at my office, and Dwain's like, I'm just out for a walk. It's like 80 degrees. I have to shovel.
I'm sweating.
I got to shovel to get to the parking lot.
Yeah. All right. I'll just say, guys, high level takeaway here for me on the process is, man, when you have dual threat quarterbacks, I really, that overcomes a lot of things. Like, Dart's further down in my ranks this week than normally because of the matchup against the Vikings, but I am with Drake. I think this could be a sneaky shootout. So I've got Dart as my QB 11, Ian's QB 11, Friedman, Kendall, and Waz are all lower at 16, 15, and 13. So take that, use that how you will. All right, let's talk about some running backs here, Drake. We'll go a little more rapid fire. We already touched on RJ Harvey earlier. I'm just going to say real quick, guys, RJ Harvey has the lead workload for a Denver team that's playing really well. They've got a good defense. They're giving him 65% of the rushing attempts. I get it. Jaguars are a tough matchup, but they're not outlier tough, in my opinion. I think they're good. If you look at them versus their opponents, yes, they have actually, they've got a minus 3.5 fantasy boost, but you start getting into a range where you start looking at the other names around RJ Harvey in the ranks, and that's where it gets tough, Drake, to bench him, in my opinion, because you start running into some other names we're going to talk about in a minute, like DeAndre Swift, part-time role, Quinshon Judkins on a terrible offense. You got Woody Marks, who we don't even know if he's going to play yet this week. And if he doesn't play, we don't know who the starter is going to be for the Texans. You got Breece Hall, terrible offense. So I did push RJ Harvey. Last week I had him, I think, at RB 12. This week I've got him at RB 16, and it is down a little bit due to the matchup. But honestly, if you got RJ Harvey, you're probably starting him, guys. Yeah. Unless, like, you're telling me it's a decision between him and Trevion Henderson and him and Javonte Williams. And even those, RJ Harvey's in their tier. He can outscore those guys this week. But another name, man, that was hit a ton here. This actually was like our second most asked about player, and I've already mentioned him. But it's Quinshon Judkins. Mm-hmm. We're probably not going to have Dylan Sampson this week. We know that Jerome Ford is already on IR. Quinshon Judkins has always had the rushing workload since he landed on the tarmac, right? Without even a workout. He took over the lead role for the Browns on the ground, just walked right off the plane into 15 rushing touches. He pretty much gets 15 to 18 opportunities per game. But the big thing is, Drake, and it's a good matchup against the Bills, but they could be getting blown out. So people see these matchups, and again, this is where it gets tricky. You're like, oh man, the Bills is one of the best matchups against teams on the ground. Yeah, for teams that can stay in the game, can the Browns even stay in this game at all against the Bills before it's just like an all-out pass fest? But I will say this, Quinshon Judkins last week had his highest route participation rate because you didn't have Dylan Sampson. that's the passing down back. And with him out, Quinshon Judkins actually had his best role of the season. So I've got him RB18, man, but a lot of people are queasy about Quinshon because they thought he was in a really good spot last week. This is recency bias. He didn't come through. He was an absolute dud in your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and he's a killer. And if you're still going along with Quinshon Judkins, I mean, look, the last 2 weeks he has 21 and 26 rushing yards, and that's on 12 and 14 attempts. That's awful. That's less than 2 yards an attempt. So what's the story here with this team? Again, quickly, it's you have a terrible quarterback. You can't sustain drives. Nobody's afraid of the pass game here in Cleveland. So will he get some
offensive line?
Banged up offensive line. Yeah, I mean, you're down a couple of tackles. I mean, it's a bad situation. Buffalo is horrendous against running backs. I mean, you look at their just DraftKings numbers allowed. They're fourth in the NFL. They average 27 points a game that they allow to opposing running backs on the other side. Listen, if I have to play him, I will. I'd rather play guys we're going to talk about later. Michael Carter, I'd rather play over him. We get down to it with estimate Tyrone Tracy, a guy we're going to talk about. I'd rather play him over him. There's a lot of guys who
I would not play Audric Estime over Quinshon Judkins. There's absolutely no way.
No. Did I say Estime? I was thinking
you mentioned his name, but we'll get to him. Like, it's just an unknown with him.
We're going to talk about, but Tracy, I'd rather play over him. Carter, I'd rather play over him. And basically, maybe whatever person is standing in a backfield wearing a Houston Texans helmet, I might want to play over him. I just don't think, as you mentioned, that they're going to have enough drives that are, in the red zone, because that's what we need. We need him to break a red zone touchdown to score against Buffalo. And if Buffalo's up by 30 on these guys at halftime, he's not going to get any work. So yeah, I'm very fine with sitting Judkins this week. He's not somebody who's going to propel you to a fantasy championship.
So here's what I'll say. He easily could. Like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but again, the range of outcome stuff, guys, when a guy's getting the workload like Judkins, like, it can still happen, and it is a decent matchup against the Bills. And I'll say the big thing is that he is, getting the routes. Like, he was almost at a 60% route participation rate. So what that does is if you're in a game script where the running game is not going well, you don't get phased out. Like, you can still get targets that then make up for the fact that you're in the bad game script. So for me, what's interesting is I actually like Quinshon Judkins even more this week than last week.
Really?
Yeah, just from a projection standpoint, because he's out there right now. He's got a chance to still get targets if he doesn't get the rushing attempts. Used to be what was holding Quinshon down was game goes sideways, doesn't get the carries, can't score fantasy points.
Right. Ends up with 6 points. Yeah.
Right. Now he's at least still on the field. And really the only game in town, the passing game, is Harold Fannin Jr. So you could still easily see Quinshon Judkins come out here, and like, it wouldn't surprise me at all, Drake, like if he had 5 catches in the game. Like, I don't think he's a great receiver or anything like that out of the backfield, but getting the extra work in the passing downs, like last week was a season high 23 routes. He had 4 targets in the game last week. Didn't end up doing a lot on his passing down work, but getting pass down stuff. Now, long down and distance stuff, they still spread around, but again, like at that 60% mark, for route participation, he's at 55% last week. So like anytime you're over the 50, that's pretty good. So I have Quinshon as a mid-range running back too, guys. I'm a little different than Drake. I would start him. Here are the names I would start him over. I would start him over Breece Hall. I would start him over Tyrone. I would start him over Tyrone Tracy.
That dynamic Giants offense. You're like, come on.
Well, we'll talk about Tracy here in a minute because he was one of the other most talked about players. But here's what I'm going to say again, guys, this is a tier of players.
Yeah.
We can talk about them until we're blue in the face, but Quinshon Judkins, Breece Hall, Tyrone Tracy, Kenneth Gainwell, Aaron Jones, they're all really in the same tier of players, right? Once you honestly get past RJ Harvey in my ranks, I have question marks. DeAndre Swift, Woody Marks, Quinshon Judkins, Rico Dowdle, Breece Hall. So we'll keep moving forward here. We're already at 44 minutes here, Drake.
This is why our old hustle shows used to go an hour and a half.
Yes.
And then people would go, who listen? Now that's the norm. I hear shows all the time. Like we're doing a 7-hour show on week 12 DFS. And apparently somebody listens to it.
Yeah, people did listen to it. What I will say is we're just going to skip Woody Marks, guys. But it's an interesting process question, right? Because you're thinking about how much do you trust players that are injured? How far do we downgrade them? Woody Marks not practicing up through yesterday. We'll see what happens today, Drake, with him. But if he's out, and we have Nick Chubb. I don't think we really know what's going to happen between him and Jawar Jordan.
That's
I don't
brutal.
think there's really a way to project it. So I would have both of those guys in running back 3 territory. If Woody Marks is active, he is a low end running back 2 guys. But let's talk about Kenneth Gainwell, because he's an interesting kind of player. Because like when we talk about Kenneth Gainwell, what are we talking about? We're talking about really a player that's just been hot over the last 4 weeks. That plays for an offensive coordinator. Historically, this is a man that as soon as you think you've pinned something down about his offense, Arthur Smith, he changes it. He will just flat out change it. And Kenneth Gainwell over these last 3 games, or at last 4 games, he's outscoring Jaylen Warren.
Yeah.
You know, Jaylen Warren's still the lead back in the rushing department, but Kenneth Gainwell's getting the short yardage, getting half of the short yardage work. He's getting all of the 2-minute offense. He's basically like the number 1 target on the team over the last month with DK Metcalf. And used to, remember guys, before that, it was all going through the tight ends. Now it's going to Kenneth Gainwell. And remember, seasons within seasons. And we see these kind of things. Oh man, 4-week trend. This guy's awesome. And then the next 4 weeks, what do defenses do? They're like, man, who's this Kenneth Gainwell guy? Who's this Gainwell guy? And why? Like, maybe we should take him away. Maybe we should really try to take him away in this game and then see what Aaron Rodgers does. So that's the buyer beware caution tag on Gainwell. But in PPR leagues, man, he's so involved right now in the passing game. Like, I have him inside my top 24.
Yeah, 7 targets in each of his last 7 targets in each of his last 2 games. Now, here's the thing with the Lions: bottom 5 in the NFL in receptions to running backs on the year. This is a game, Dwayne, where it's all about pace. The Lions, they want to push the pace. Dan Campbell calling plays. They're going to be motoring all over the field. Then we look at who runs like the second fewest plays in the NFL. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So can the pace get pushed enough by the Lions jumping out to a lead and hopefully making and dragging and clawing, bringing the Steelers along with them? Because that's what we're going to have to need. Is we need the Lions to go run away and hide, and then Kenny Gainwell and all these receptions and playing a little quicker hopefully will bring him up. But I mean, look at it, his range of outcomes. What's he going to do? Most likely, I don't know, probably between 8 and 12 points, because that's what he's done the last month.
Yeah, I agree. He is a big time playmaker. He's got some electricity, very involved in the passing, stuff. So we'll see what happens. With Gainwell, you get this, potential shootout matchup, like you mentioned, that makes them need to throw more. They're paths to success, but I think low end running back too. Like some of the start sit questions that I got on Gainwell yesterday in the thread, I'll just run through them real quick. One of them was Trevion Henderson, RJ Harvey, Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell. Pick 2. I'm easily going Henderson and Harvey still. Yeah. So Gainwell's out in that equation to me. Here's another one: Warren versus Gainwell. I would go with Gainwell over Warren.
I think you have to at this point.
I think they're closer than people think, but I would go with Gainwell over Warren. And here's one where it's a pick, the flex. It's it's Woody Marks, Justin Jefferson, and Kenneth Gainwell.
Can you imagine that on draft day? Thinking 3 months from now, I'm going to be against Kenny Gainwell, who went undrafted, and Woody Marks, who nobody in your draft could pick out of a lineup.
And Justin Jefferson's in this question.
Yeah, the guy you spent the 8th overall pick on.
Fantasy football is so fun. Would you start Kenneth Gainwell over? If you knew Woody Marks was playing,
the funny thing is the answer is probably yes.
You would start him over Justin Jefferson.
Why not?
Like again, I'll say this, guys. Like, it's literally, what's sad about it is it's in the coin flip territory if you look at my ranks. And I know you guys just want a hard answer here. But I would probably go Justin Jefferson still against.
He's no Jalen Naylor, that's for sure.
Jesus, yeah. We'll get into Justin Jefferson, I think, here in a second. Kenny Gainwell versus Justin Jefferson. Like you said, who would have thought that was the question, that we'd be asking at this point in the year? Oh my goodness.
How drunk are you at your draft?
Tyrone Tracy and Michael Carter and Audric Estime are the last 3. Let's go rapid fire here. Okay. Drake, go ahead. Give us your thoughts on Tyrone Tracy and your process here. You're higher on him than me.
Yeah, I like Tracy because I think his floor is like 60 yards. He's got a good shot at a touchdown. He'll catch a couple of passes. Listen, they do like using Devin Singletary around the goal line a little bit, but Tracy's just a better player. You could see his usage over the past few weeks, really trending up since he's been healthy. I like him in this matchup against Minnesota. If he's going to go out there and catch a couple passes, again, we talked about this possibly being a shootout. I'm with it. I think Tracy, if you need him as a low-end flex or you're dead at running back, he's your RB2. I think you could do a lot worse in a game that should see some points.
Yeah, I think the very interesting thing with Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary in 4 games under Mike Kafka is it's essentially flipped back and forth every game. The most recent data point was Tyrone Tracy leading the way. I know people are, Tyrone Tracy got hurt in the 4th quarter of the 3rd game. Well, it didn't matter. Like Devin Singletary was already leading the way in that game before the injury happened. But I think this one's tricky. I have Tyrone Tracy projected, I think probably more lower than most sites because I'm using the full 4-game sample with Kafka and not pretending that I think that Tyrone Tracy is for sure like a far and away the lead back. I think he is the lead back for this team, but I think Devin Singletary, we've seen 2 games out of the 4 where it was essentially an even split. The other 2 games, it was Tyrone Tracy leading the way. The thing I like about Tracy is I do think he's more he's game script proof because if they fall behind, he is the guy they like to have on the field. If they're playing from a lead, at worst case, he's in a split backfield. So I think where we agree is he is a running back 2. I just have him. I'm not as confident in him as some people. I have him at running back 23 this week.
I think that's fair. That's a fair spot for him. Is he not going to set the world on fire again?
But he's in a tier of guys. Again, guys, he's in, even though he's at 23 and Judkins is at 18, like I think it's ultimately still a your call situation. And I know you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but I still think that is a your call kind of situation. If you want to go with Tracy over Judkins, I'm more certain about Judkins' role, right? But I'm also more certain that the Browns offense is terrible. So, I mean, we have these conflicting things, whereas Tyrone Tracy, I think the Giants offense is below average and I'm less confident in his role. And so that's how he ends up below in the ranks. So you can use that for what you will. If I had to choose between the 2, I would start Quinshon Judkins over Tyrone Tracy, but they are in the same tier. Michael Carter really quickly dominated the utilization last week, Drake. But it was Amari DiMercado's first game back from the high ankle sprain. So there's a little bit of risk that they split it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I'm probably about to go ahead and move Carter up now that, we know Bam Knight is out and all those things. And again, like the Cardinals offense, this dude had 11 targets last week.
Yeah. I mean, I have Michael.
Now you're getting Marv back. So you're not getting 11 targets if Marv is back. Plus you have Michael Wilson, but Michael Carter's been a decent receiver out of the backfield for his career.
This entire season, it doesn't matter who the back for Arizona is, whether it's, you go back to, remember James Conner used to be on this team. James Conner, Carter, Bam Knight, whoever's out there, DiMercado. If you're the lead back and you're getting the lion's share of the carry and touches in this offense, you're going to be productive for fantasy. So Michael Carter, I think, RB 27, I think you have listed that here. I think I could even go higher than that. Could he bust out and be the Colby Parkinson of running backs? Yeah, why not? Because he's just not that talented. But I don't know. I think it's all about usage. And if you're looking for someone who's going to get the ball 15 to 20 times in a week, I have no problem putting Michael Carter in a lineup.
He projects as the running back 20 right now, guys, in the projection model. I have him a little bit lower in the ranks. I'm going to squeeze him inside the top 24. My only caveat is, don't be surprised if Amari DiMercado suddenly gets 50% of the work. It's one of these things where we can get overconfident about 1 week of data when there was another player that was injured returning to the lineup. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Amari DiMercado, but there's enough of a risk that I kind of kept players that I knew had roles, and I'm pretty certain about what their roles are, a little bit ahead of Carter in the ranks. But in the projections, he does come out as a 12.6, which is right there in the range. You mentioned earlier that you would start him over Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah.
Judkins is at a 13.3. The thing I like about Carter over a lot of the other names we talked about is what you mentioned. The Cardinals offense, is going to score fantasy points. And if it doesn't, it would be an outlier performance from them. Right? It would just be like, well, wow, we got lucky. But based on all the data we have, they score fantasy points with Jacoby Brissett under center. So I really like that one. Okay. We will keep moving on. Any thoughts on Audric Estime? I know yesterday we had Nick Underhill, great beat writer for the Saints. He came out when he was asked by Roto Wolf, hey, who's going to be the starter here? And he said he would lean Estime. Of course, everybody's going to run with that and think that means that Audric Estime is completely locked in. All I'll say, guys, last week, once we lost Devin Neal from the game, Evan Hull actually led the team the rest of the way over Estime, and it was still gross. It was also giving Tyler Shuck more of the design rushing attempts. Taysom Hill got 13% of the rushing attempts after we had the departure of Devin Neal from the game with a hamstring injury. So I would just say be really careful with this one, guys. It's fine if you want to believe that Audric Estime is the running back to own in New Orleans this week. I think my concern, Drake, is that could be worthless. It could be a split between
the Jets,
Hull, Taysom Hill. Well, they have a good matchup.
That's the thing.
If you manage to be right, and he does get 70% of the workload, great. Here's what I would say about Estime. You're a massive underdog. You're looking down through guys. You're like, I could start Kareem Hunt. You know what his role is, but you know what his role is not. I might start Estime over him, just thinking I could get lucky, and he leads the backfield. But just realize he also could get 35% of the rushing workload and be the lead ball carrier for the team.
He could also be a guy who, the reason we loved him is we saw him playing on those late game snaps. He was playing in that 2-minute offense, and he was seeing some targets. They might not need that against the Jets. So that could be more Evan Hull and, like you said, Taysom. So if I could find anybody else besides any of these Saints guys, I'm trying to go elsewhere because it scares the crap out of me. Audric Estime could have 4 points as a ceiling, and that could just torpedo the rest of your fantasy playoffs. So I'm trying to find anybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you. There is a chance that he leads the way, guys. I'll just say that we don't really have any way of knowing. And that's the kind of advice you have to be careful from, in my opinion. There will be people that come out and make these massive, bold stands that, man, Estime is going to be the guy this week. And he might be, but it really is a guess. And we don't have enough data at this point to say we're making a super educated guess, right? We're just going off of, okay, what we're hearing from beat reporters and things like that, which you guys have been around long enough to see how often those things can go wrong and how often they go right. Sometimes it's right. Sometimes it's wrong. I prefer to have a little bit more data to make that sort of decision. So Audric Estime, like all the players we've talked about, I'm starting ahead of Estime this week. All right, wide receivers. 2 quick names that are ranked a little bit higher for us. Like these guys are in our top 24. But people asking about Terry McLaurin against your Eagles. That's a really tough matchup for wide receivers. It's an outlier bad matchup for wide receivers, but everything's going through Terry McLaurin right now for the Commanders. And he's healthy.
And McLaurin plays really well against the Eagles. He and Quinyon Mitchell always have a lot of back and forth with each other. So listen, you got Marcus Mariota. I don't necessarily love that. You got no Laramie Tunsil, so maybe this Eagles pass rush could go and wreak some havoc. But Debo's got a brutal matchup in the slot with Cooper DeJean, so the ball's got to go somewhere in a game that Philadelphia figures to be leading. I have no issue starting Terry McLaurin this week. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think he's a top 18 wide receiver this week, guys. If you look at Terry McLaurin, since he's returned to the lineup, he's got a 28% target share. He's averaging 7.7 targets per game, 113 air yards per game, 1.3 end zone targets per game. So he's getting the looks in the green zone. He's getting the looks in the end zone. He's getting the targets. He's getting the air yards. That's really all you can ask for. It is a tough matchup, but it's not enough for me to really consider benching Terry McLaurin. I think he really should be in more lineups than not. Here are some questions we got on McLaurin in our chat. Waddle versus McLaurin.
Oh, God. McLaurin. Of course.
Yeah.
Anyone versus Waddle at this point.
You got McLaurin versus Debo and Igbuka. I'm going McLaurin. I don't think that's a question.
Nope.
Sorry, we got one more here. We got McLaurin versus Rico Dowdle and Ladd McConkey. I'm going McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, I could make the case for Uncle Rico there between all of those guys. I kind of like.
I think the player with the most certain role that's also talented is Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to talk you out of it. McLaurin, he's the most talented guy. He's the guy most likely of all those guys that could put up 20.
Right, and Rico Dowdle, he did have a larger workload in the game back from the bye, which I talked about in my article this week. But the week before that, he was the running back too to Chuba Hubbard. So what I tend to do in situations like this is I lean into what I know. I know Terry McLaurin's going to be on the field, and I know he's been playing good football. And so Rico Dowdle, will I be surprised if he gets 60% of the work? No. Will I be surprised if it's a game script that somehow plays out where they give him 40% of the work? No. Yeah. So like if he gets his 60, he has a really good chance to outscore McLaurin. But if he doesn't, McLaurin's most likely outscoring him. So again, they are the same tier. It's up to you guys. You can make this call on these plays, but we're just trying to share the process. And honestly, like I used to get way deep in the weeds of a lot of extra data too, but I just found that a lot of it's doesn't really matter. Like I just started testing it to see if it helps predict fantasy and all that. I mean, a lot of the simpler things you guys are already thinking about are really some of the big factors and whether or not you should start a player. So I do think they're all close. Well, what about McConkey? McConkey, he's got the matchup with the Cowboys, Drake, but this is not your early season Chargers.
No, and McConkey's been terrible over the last month. I went and looked back at his numbers. I'm like, oh, McConkey's just a guy you start every single week and forget about it. Not really. The offensive line is so bad with the Chargers that Herbert is just under siege every time he drops back. The guy's getting killed out there, which you would think he wants to get the ball out quick, and that could help a guy like McConkey out of the slot, but it really isn't. But listen, in this spot against your Cowboys, I mean, he's got to come through. You'd think. I mean, are you still even in the playoffs if Vlad McConkey's on your roster? That's probably a question we should ask.
Well, yeah, evidently, yes, because he was asked about a lot in the thread, but people are asking for a good reason. And that's because over the last 4 games for Ladd McConkey, he's averaged 6.1 fantasy points.
He's been terrible.
Now, here's the thing again, guys, seasons within seasons. You loved Ladd McConkey 8 weeks ago. You don't like him now, and these things have a way of changing. I do think the Cowboys matchup is enough that he's a low-end wide receiver 2 this week, Drake.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I'm not super confident for the reasons you name. Massive offensive line concerns. You're under a lot of pressure. The Cowboys will see what happens with Quinnen Williams. He's in the concussion protocol, but they've not a great defense, but they're better than what they were early in the year. And the other thing is the Chargers are just running the ball. They're like, they know they have these problems. So they're just running the ball. They were their drop back rate over expected early in the year. They were a pass first team. Now they're a run first team trying to squeak their way into the play, not squeak their way in. They still have a good record. They have a good shot at the playoffs here. And they're just trying not to lose games, in my opinion.
And they've got a lot of guys that they're throwing the ball to more and more now. You see that.
It's a crowded room.
Lambert Smith and Harris and all these guys, along Gadsden. There's a lot of guys getting the football here. It's not that Ladd McConkey's commanding targets as he did a year or two ago.
He is. Like, his target share is fine, but because they're running the ball so much and there is enough competition, like it's the raw targets and the raw air yards are what's killing him. So here are a couple names that we got to ask, Drake. McConkey versus Devontae Smith.
Oh, Smith all day.
Okay. Ladd McConkey versus Justin Jefferson.
My God. You know what? I'm going to go. Jefferson's due. I'm saying
he is due. He's still getting the targets, guys. He's still getting the air yards. His catchable air yards is the one thing holding him down. 41 per game this year. This is a man that's had catchable air yard seasons of over 100 yards in the last 2 years.
And remember, Justin Jefferson had a touchdown called back last week that everyone would be changing their narrative on Justin Jefferson last week if not for that penalty. I think it was like a man downfield or some nonsense. But we'd all be like, "Oh, Justin Jefferson's back."
Drake versus the Broncos versus Ladd McConkey versus the Cowboys. So now you have the player that's been playing well, and Jacoby Myers, really tough matchup. The player that hasn't been playing well and is off. Well, he hasn't. It's not him, but his offense hasn't been playing well. That has the best matchup in fantasy for wide receivers. Versus a guy that's got one of the worst matchups for wide receivers in Jacoby Myers.
I don't think that Surtain will shadow Myers. I think if anything, he goes outside
with BTJ.
BTJ. So not that they're still not great.
And then you get Riley Cooper, or not Riley Cooper. Why am I saying Riley Cooper? That was the old wide receiver for the Eagles.
Yes.
He did some really stupid stuff, if I remember correctly.
White lightning out there, yeah.
Moss. I'm thinking of Moss.
Yeah, again, very good player. Gets targeted.
White dude that plays football named Riley. Whatever.
I would play in that situation. I would play Jacoby Myers. I think they're going to throw the ball more, and I think they just reward him with a contract. They obviously like him.
Yeah, and I think they're in the same tier again, guys. But if you're using the tiebreaker and you want to just lean into the player that's produced, and just got rewarded with his contract, I could see Jacoby Myers as well. The one other question we had was versus Wan'Dale Robinson in a really tough matchup. The Vikings, a minus 6.6 adjusted fantasy points allowed per game to opposing wide receiver rooms. Really tough matchup.
It is, but who else are the Giants going to throw to? I mean, they've got Theo Johnson at tight end. I mean, everybody else is a bum. So I would go Wan'Dale there.
Okay. All right. I'm leaning McConkey over Wan'Dale. The rest of them, I'm going Justin Jefferson. man, like it's so close. Again, it is a really big tier. The big thing with Jefferson, guys, is all of the underlying data has still been there. It's just the connection itself between him and McCarthy has not been good. He does have a good matchup against the Giants. I'm with you. I think Justin Jefferson does finally, break free. And I have not said that yet. I've said the underlying data is there. It could happen, but you're all right. He is due for
someone's going to win $1 million when they put a JJ McCarthy stack with Justin Jefferson because nobody wants to play it. And you get, I remember writing it up. You can get Jefferson for I think it's like $6K. Don't quote me on that, but it's cheap. It's like cheaper than he's ever been.
Yes. Okay, Jaylen Waddle, we already kind of touched on, guys. I moved him down to basically wide receiver 24. You could even go a little lower, and it's just Quinn Ewers. We
can't do it.
We have no clue. Might he be good? Yes. Has Tua been great? No, but we at least knew what the floor was with Tua. There's a better chance that Quinn Ewers comes out and throws for 140 yards than surprises us with 300. I'm just going to say that based off of historical data. I will say, like, the aggregate passing props, across the marketplace right now for Quinn Ewers, we're going over the hour, guys. I don't even care. I got my buddy Brian Drake. We're talking data.
I'll crack some beers. I mean, what time? Yeah, it's afternoon here where I am.
Yeah, you're good. It's still 11 here, but I could find a breakfast beverage of choice for sure. But yeah, just looking real quickly for Miami. The prop market. The prop market has adjusted and come down, because I was thinking, like, man, it started off at like 200 for Quinn Ewers, and I was like, that's crazy, because my first projection on Quinn Ewers was 160 yards. And again, guys, I go back and research these things, like rookie quarterbacks that were not first round picks coming in and taking over these offense. Guys, they typically suck.
Yeah.
I get it. There are outliers. Tony Romo, undrafted guy. Tom Brady. There are definitely outliers, but remember the word, they're outliers. Most of the examples of this have not gone well. I'm still projecting the under. I move mine up a little bit on Quinn Ewers, but now that the market's coming down, I'm actually adjusting this right now. I'm staying under because I want people to bet the under on Quinn Ewers passing yards. I don't care that they're facing the Bengals. Anyway, markets are at 185.
Quinn Ewers, let me just throw this in. So Quinn Ewers played sparingly in a game against Cleveland earlier this season. He completed 5 of 8 passes for 53 yards. 53 yards. One of them was a 40-yarder. So the other 4 passes that were completed went for 13 yards. I don't know who's catching these, if it's all going to be Darren Waller or Achane, who I think is going to have 85 touches in this game, but it ain't going to be Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah. So I just adjusted my projection on Ewers. I'm at 170.5, like just looking across all the factors. And that's a little above where I started, but I'm keeping it below the market. So yeah, if you can get Waddle out of your lineup, you should. Here are some really quick questions though, Drake, of the questions that we got. So you guys will have this example. Waddle versus McLaurin. I'm going McLaurin all day.
Yeah.
Waddle versus Jalen Coker. I'm going Waddle. I'm not getting that cute. Like, Waddle's still going to be probably the top target on his team. Jalen Coker, let's be honest, guys. Bryce Young is not that much better than Quinn Ewers. Like, I get it. He's had a big game here and there, but Bryce Young,
the volume's not there with Carolina either. What's he going to get? 4 targets, and we're hoping.
Well, even when he gets the volume, even in the games where they get forced into throwing, most of the time it's not good. I will say Bryce Young's played a little bit better down the stretch, but I'm still a believer that we've got a big enough body of work on him that I don't like it. Tet McMillan's still the number 1 target in the offense. It's debatable whether it's Coker, as the wide receiver 2, or whether it's Liggett. Like, they kind of rotate back and forth. They'll get the backs involved. I got a ton of questions on Coker. Guys, you're playing in really deep leagues if you started Jalen Coker this week. Like, again, you have a low upside offense, on most weeks, that wants to run the ball, and you have the second or third target on that offense. Like, it's not really an ideal recipe. And I like Jalen Coker. I think he's a good player. But I'm starting Waddle there. How about Waddle versus BTJ, probably getting the shadow coverage? I have Waddle ahead there. Egbuka and Tet.
Oh, man, I don't think Tet's fully healthy. That's why I kind of like leaning Coker a little bit between those two guys. Geez Louise.
But if Tet practices and in which he has been limited, I'm not worried about it, to be honest.
Coker versus Tet last 3 weeks. I used your own data here. Coker's outpacing him in targets per route run, total targets, air yards, third and fourth down targets. But again, like I said, it's such a low octane offense.
And that's still a small sample. Like we've got a bigger, Tet's a better prospect, better college player, better college profile, better overall numbers on the season than Jalen Coker. I think that will mostly be small sample, variance at the end of the day for Coker. I do like Coker as a player. I think he's better than Tet McMillan. And if I had to place a bet 10,000 times on who's going to lead the team in targets, I would place the bet on Tet McMillan all 10,000. So that's me on him. But Waddle versus BTJ.
You know what? I have to lean quarterback and I have to lean offensive coordinator who can scheme him open. I'm going to go BTJ there.
Yeah, I'm going Waddle. BTJ has been better the last few weeks. Trevor Lawrence has played really 4 bad defenses in a row. This is a big test for him. Trevor Lawrence, I'm still going to lean into the fact that I don't think he's very good. We've seen these heaters from him before. I'll give him props. Jaguars offense is playing really good right now. And people can get hot, guys, and stay on a hot streak. And that can win you a fantasy championship. So I do think that could be true. You could end up being right, Drake. Playing against Surtain is really tough. Now, we have seen some wide receivers get Surtain over the last few weeks. He's not unbeatable, but I just feel like it's so easy to go to Jacoby Myers, and you have a tight end you can go to. They have other guys. So I lean Waddle there, but it is a close call. What about Waddle versus Jayden Reed?
Jayden Reed stole this from my guy, Joe Dolan. Shout out to him and his great article that he does at Fantasy Points. Over the last 5 weeks, Chicago has allowed the second most points to opposing slot receivers at 15.6. We know that Watson's a little banged up for the Packers, but I think he's going to try to trudge it out. I'm rolling Jayden Reed out in a few lineups, so I would definitely go. Actually, I made that exact decision. I pulled Waddle out of a lineup and put Jayden Reed in it.
Okay, yeah. So I've got Waddle ranked 1 spot ahead of Jayden Reed. So that tells you guys, again, it's a very close decision between the two, and I can't really argue with Drake's logic. We know Jayden Reed. You guys just have to know Jayden Reed can be a complete dud because he doesn't get a full-time role, but you already know that if you have Jayden Reed on your roster. He's a very good player. He's a good player at football. It's just a matter of does he get fed this week or not?
Yeah, hopefully get some rushing attempts.
Yeah, he's had 2 rushing attempts and since his return over the last 2 games. All right. Let's see. Any other? Yeah, Egbuka, man. We got a ton of questions on Emeka Egbuka. Role reduced to a 65% route participation rate, guys.
Yeah.
With McMillan plus Mike Evans back last week. Still a second on the team in targets. Still, he's like Justin Jefferson from a standpoint of the targets, the air yards. All that stuff was still there last week. But once you reduce his role, I really had to move him down the ranks this week. I think he's a wide receiver 3. I'll give you some of the names that we got on Egbuka, Drake, and I'll let you tell the folks who you would start. Emeka Egbuka versus Deebo Samuel.
I don't love either of them. I really don't love Egbuka. I mean, Egbuka, had his best game in a month on a reduced role. I'm going to go Egbuka there over Deebo.
I have Egbuka over Deebo as well. All right, so what about Egbuka versus Marvin Harrison Jr. if he returns to the lineup?
I'm going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Marvin Harrison, when he comes back in the lineup, Brissett actually targets him more than Michael Wilson. So it wouldn't shock me if Michael Wilson really drops down and Harrison kind of re-inherits more of that number 1 role.
Yep, I agree with that too. Egbuka versus Jayden Reed, 2 players that are in part-time roles. I'm going Egbuka. But it's really close. Again, I have Reed ranked 1 spot ahead, but very similar things. 2 passing offenses we feel decent about. I think the Bucs passing offense has more upside in it, where the Packers are always going to stay balanced, guys. They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to, really run that kind of game. Whereas the Bucs will get into these games where we're just going to throw it every play. So that's in the range of outcomes for them. So I like that slightly better for Egbuka. Reed, very close call. Which way are you going?
Because I'm playing Reed in a lineup, I'm going to go Jayden Reed there and will it into existence. I'm manifesting a big Jayden Reed game. I've already got the high noons on ice for that Saturday night game. We're making it happen with Jayden Reed.
Okay. All right. Again, really close calls here, guys. But similar players, similar situations. The projections also have them really close as well. So All right, let's move. Well, one last wide receiver that I'll mention here, Drake, because we did get questions on him. We already talked about Jalen Coker. I think we both agree he's a wide receiver 4. I know he's played better over the last few weeks, but just be careful, guys. It's a pretty capped offense. Could it have a big game? Yeah, sure it could. But he's most likely not going to lead the team in targets on a run-first team. A.D. Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
A.D. Mitchell, who since becoming a starter for the Jets, Drake, has been really good as far as like doing his part. Like, and doing your part is, okay, do you actually go out there and get the quarterback to throw the ball to you? Guys, I have this little cheat code for when we want to talk about wide receivers and who we think the best wide receivers are. My cheat code is NFL quarterbacks, even ones named Brady Cook, know way more than everyone talking, for the most part, about fantasy will ever know about wide receivers. And guess who they want to throw the ball to? The players that they think will make good things happen for them when they throw it to them. And A.D. Mitchell, man, since coming over to the Jets in the 4 games that he's been the starter, has averaged 125 air yards per game, 8 targets per game with a 27% target share. So the dude's going to have a role. Now, what I can't tell you is he going to give you like the 4 points he gave you from week 14? Or is he going to give you the week that he gave you last week where he turns those targets into 17.4 fantasy points? He's a boom bust kind of player. So what are your thoughts on A.D. Mitchell against the Saints this week?
You hit the nail on the head. The last 3 weeks, 9, 6, 12 targets. He scored twice. He's kind of all they've got at this point. It's him. It's Mechie, who's been on a bunch of teams over the past year. So if I have him and I need upside, I have no problem rolling A.D. Mitchell out. I was contemplating A.D. Mitchell over Jaylen Waddle on that roster because I need the upside, if I'm being frank about it. So yeah,
I think they're actually very similar players because Brady Cook versus Quinn Ewers is the same thing. And and Jaylen Warren and A.D. Mitchell are both earning targets over the last. I probably lean Jaylen Waddle because he's earned targets for his life. But A.D. Mitchell is done at these 4 games.
Do you think that Jaylen Waddle this week could? I mean, look at what he's done the last 3 weeks. Do you think Jaylen Waddle could get 9 or 12 targets?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
You got me thinking.
What you have to remember, man, these 4-week samples, like 4 weeks is really where the data picks up predictiveness, like where I've studied it. But again, like go sort to any 4-game stretch over the season, Drake, start anywhere you want, go from week 3 to 7, and then go from week 5 to 9 and look at how much things change. Again, it's the seasons within the season stuff. Mm-hmm. Jaylen Waddle's cooled off over the last few games. Who's heated up? Darren Waller. What do defenses now see when they're studying for the Dolphins? Man, this Darren Waller guy is catching all the touchdowns. We better take him away. What happens? Jaylen Waddle, a guy that we know is talented, pops off. What happens to A.D. Mitchell? The defensive coordinators are like, who's this A.D. Mitchell?
Exactly.
I don't know who this guy is. Well, he's getting all the looks. We should take him away this week. Then what happens? The ball goes to Mechie. And so you just have to remember, guys, that most of the time, these defensive coordinators, a lot of what they're studying is the last 4 games of film. And they don't care about player names. They're just looking at the numbers and who's getting the ball. They're trying to decide who they want to isolate and take away. And that's what creates these swings over these 4-game samples a lot of times is what defenses decide to do and the way they're game planning. But I do think what's funny is they are in the same tier. I have Jaylen Waddle, I think, is wide receiver 24 or 25. I have A.D. Mitchell at 32. That's how closely grouped all these guys are. Mm-hmm. And both players are capable of earning targets. They have bad quarterback situations. So I think they're similar from that standpoint. For me, I go to the tiebreaker goes to the player that's done it for their career, not a shorter sample, but close enough that I'm not going to argue with you that it's the same tier.
Yeah, I'm with you. Again, if you can avoid these offenses, these quarterbacks, this situation, and find somebody with a pulse on a better team, like lean that way.
Yeah. But again, you have to come back to talent. I don't want a player that's on a really good offense that isn't earning any targets. Again, it's all based on the projections and rankings, guys, and you can check them out. But here are some quick decisions on A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell versus Jalen Coker. I'm going Mitchell easy.
Yeah.
A.D. Mitchell versus Jordan Addison.
I'm going to go Mitchell there.
I am too. A.D. Mitchell versus Michael Pittman Jr.
Oh God,
Talk about bad quarterbacks.
I can't start anybody with, on that Colts team. No, there's no chance.
Yeah, I actually have A.D. Mitchell ahead of Michael Pittman. I've got Michael Pittman as a borderline wide receiver 3. I'd really rather not have him in lineups. Here's a cross-pollination. A.D. Mitchell versus Ashton Genty.
Oh, man. I took Ashton Genty in the first round of multiple drafts. You know what? I'm going A.D. Mitchell there. I know that Genty has been, hey, he's got a little something going in the pass game here, but I think they're going to get Geno back. I don't know if that's a good idea. No,
Geno's still better than what it was with Kenny. You know the Kenny Pickett experience. He actually had a good game for you guys in Philly that time.
Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's no way that Genty is going to pop off for a 20-point game. It's just not with that offense. They're not going to sustain anything, but it only really takes one play for A.D. Mitchell to catch a bomb. And all of a sudden, hey, here's a 70-yard touchdown for this kid.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely a way for Genty to score 20 fantasy points, like just the way range of outcomes work based on the volume he gets. But it's such it's tough, because it is a really tough matchup against the Texans as well. And they're probably not going to be able to just move the ball in general, which makes it tough for Genty to score these touchdowns. So I do agree that it's more likely A.D. Mitchell makes your day on one play. And then it's like anything else is icing on the top versus Genty making your day on one play and then you getting the icing on the top. So I think that's a good call out as well. But guys, again, when you go look at the ranks, you look at the projections, Ashton Genty and A.D. Mitchell project really close. They're in the same range. And so the fun of making fantasy football decisions. All right, tight ends really quickly, Drake. I've said really quickly every segment. And we continue.
We've never done a quick show.
Yeah, we've never. Colston Loveland. I've got him at tight end 11, man. We're going to have no Rome Odunze this week. We're not going to have Luther Burden. DJ Moore's caught some touchdowns recently, but, has not been earning targets for the season or for the last 4 weeks. I just think Shane Waldron. We all hate Shane Waldron, but Ben Johnson hates DJ Moore. So thoughts on Loveland? Got a lot of questions about Loveland in the thread. I think he's definitely in the top 12.
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to be the number one target in this offense this weekend. And if you've got him, play him. I don't know why there's even who are you going to?
Loveland versus Warren. I think it's Loveland.
Oh, yeah. Loveland by a mile. The only player I think at this point you can look at and say confidently at the tight end position would be McBride. At this point, I mean, outside of that, it's all a coin flip.
Kittle and McBride.
Okay,
Kittle is
give me a Kittle, but
since he's been healthy and back, Kittle and McBride are actually just McBride's number 1, Kittle's number 2. They're in their own little tier right now. Kyle Pitts, we're going to probably get Drake London back, so we'll see what happens. All right, Loveland versus cross-pollination, Pittman or Coker. I'm going Loveland.
Yeah. I'm with you because this is what we're going to get out of because we've seen it for every game for the last almost 2 months. You're going to get 4 catches for 50 yards out of Loveland. That's what you're going to get. If he scores, great. Otherwise,
and he can do more because they're so banged up. I think his ceiling, that you're at least getting that. I think from Loveland. Obviously, the range of outcomes is lower. If you really look at the way the data works, but I think he's the best receiver on the Bears this weekend.
Sure, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I think he has the upside to catch 2 touchdowns. They will look his way once they get down in the green zone and the red zone, end zone targets. Loveland does really well in those areas as well. So I think you could honestly rank Colston Loveland this week. I'm just pulling up, our tight end rankings over on the site, and I'm looking at them right now. I think you could rank Loveland as high as tight end 6 this week. I think you could rank him over Goddard. You could rank him over Kelsey. You could rank him over Ferguson. You could rank him over Schultz. I think you could rank him that high this week. Those guys are all kind of in a range together. And I wouldn't blame anyone if they wanted to just go with Loveland with the banged up other options on the offense.
Yeah, with those guys out, I mean, you could see double-digit targets for Colston Loveland, something we really haven't seen for him this year. So if that's the case and he sees 10 targets this week, then he's got a good chance of probably hauling in 7 of them for 80 yards. And if he scores, now you're really cooking with some gas.
Yeah. Looking at Loveland, I do have this projected already with Rome Odunze out. Colston Loveland, from a projection standpoint, guys, he projects as the tight end 7 on the week. I'm probably going to move him up the ranks because I just adjusted some of this stuff last night. But 11.2 fantasy points, and then his Xfinity best ceiling is 17.1, which, guys, remember, that's the reasonable ceiling. Trey McBride's is 26.9. Loveland's is 17.1. Main thing holding it down is we are going to have Cole Kmet, and we know they don't give Loveland this full-time role. But with Burden out, he might play 65% of the role of a tight end, and they might give him a 15% boost and let him play slot, with both Burden and Odunze out. So there's still this chance that Loveland gets to like an 80% route participation rate this week, which I don't have him projected for. I've got him projected for 65. I just have some more targets going to him due to the other guys being out. But I would say the thing the model doesn't account for is if like he somehow played a more full-time role with Burden out, then his ceiling would be closer to 20 fantasy points in a PPR league. So I really like Loveland this week. Couple of others here. The other two most asked about guys, Darren Waller getting the Cincinnati off defense matchup, the best matchup for tight ends. But now you get Quinn Ewers, who we just talked about, with Jaylen Warren, Jaylen Waddle. So I had to start the week, man. I had Waller as like my tight end 7, but after I got the news on Quinn Ewers, I moved him to tight end 12. Where are you at on Waller?
Yeah, and listen, with Waller, last week he got the 2 touchdowns. They were very late. I mean, he wasn't doing a whole lot before then. And if we're going to say we're going against Cincinnati, who gives up 5 more points than the next best terrible defense, or next worst, I should say, to the tight end position, it screams, okay, Waller's going to have a big week. I don't know about that. I mean, just the fact that Quinn Ewers is on the field just scares me off everybody not named Devon Achane on this team. So listen, I get it. Some people don't have backup tight ends. You got to roll them out there, but there's nothing in here that says he couldn't do what he did the past 2 weeks. 1 for 13, 2 for 47. I think that's what we're looking at. We're not going to get the 7 for 66 and 2 we saw a week ago. It's just, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could happen. I don't care so much about late game production. That doesn't really matter to me. Like, let's just look at full games. Like, garbage time happens to everybody. It gets spread out over time. But to your point, like, it's the main concern is Quinn Ewers. I'll tell you guys this. He projects for 8.7 fantasy points, which is number 16 in the projections. So let's just take a look at a couple of these questions we got on him really quick, Drake, and see where you are on Waller. He was the most asked about tight end.
Wow.
Darren Waller versus some of these are easy. Darren Waller versus Brock Bowers. We're going Brock Bowers. Darren Waller versus Tyler Warren.
You know what? In that case, I will then go with Waller. Just because
I have him ahead.
Yeah.
Too. Because we're talking about 2 bad quarterbacks, right? And we're talking about one of the tight ends that has a really great matchup. So I think leaning Waller as your tiebreaker is fine.
Exactly.
Waller versus Juwan Johnson.
I think I'm gonna go Juwan Johnson here. Again, we're without Devon Vele on that team, so it's Olave and who else, and that who else because the running game is in flux. So I think Juwan Johnson could see a really nice target game.
Waller versus Strange. He's also got Schultz. Schultz, I think, is easy. You're starting Schultz. What about Waller versus Strange?
Strange, down week last week, good matchup. I like it. I think if I have to go between those two guys, give me Strange.
Okay. I'm just checking Waller versus Kincaid.
I mean, is he going to play? That's
TBD on he hasn't practiced. Let's say Kincaid practices and he's active.
I think that scares me too much. And
still go with Waller.
I still going to go with Waller there.
I have Waller ahead as well. And I still have Kincaid in the projections, but I've got him docked for not being 100%. Darren Waller versus Michael Carter. We're playing Carter.
Yes.
Okay. And the last one is Tyler Warren, another name that we just talked about. Thoughts on Tyler Warren for the week?
Well, I mean, I had a tweet earlier this week that how fast the ball came out of Phil Rivers' hands. It was, like 3rd highest on the week. He threw the ball to his first read target, something like 80+% of the time, which was the number 1 of all quarterbacks on the week. So he knows where the play is supposed to go, and that's where the play is going. He's not dancing around the pocket looking to find his open read. If that first read is Tyler Warren, great. But we're not getting anything downfield at this point. There's no deep shots. It's all just little dinks and dunks around the line of scrimmage. So you had a tweet about that also, I believe, this week on the depth of target for Phil Rivers, right?
So I'm not feeling it. He's the least impacted of these guys by Phil Rivers for the reasons that you just said, and he gets a lot of the design stuff. But essentially, what you're just trying to compile some catches.
Yeah.
The problem with the Colts offense now, you name one of it, you're not going to get the big plays downfield. They might get lucky and hit one here or there, but it's not going to be with any sort of consistency. And then the other thing is, like, guys, just look at the team totals and what they're going to look like since Phillip Rivers took over. This is my thing with Jonathan Taylor. You're still starting him every week, but he's not a top 3 running back anymore. And I have people wanting to argue about that. Oh, no, man, he's getting the touches. Yeah, he ain't going to get the touchdowns, man. They were top 3 in touchdown drive rate, top 3 in the rate of reaching the red zone. Ball game, that's all over, man, with Phillip Rivers here. They're going to be hopeful to be middle of the pack. They could be bottom 5 in the offense with Phillip Rivers under center, or Anthony Richardson if he eventually makes his way back. There's a reason they don't want to play Anthony Richardson, and it ain't just because of injury. It's because he just takes the offense completely off schedule. And so Tyler Warren, I think he could still get there on the catches, Brian. He's a low-end tight end 1. The problem is, man, like, might not score another touchdown the rest of the way.
No, and that's why I dropped him for Colby Parkinson in a league. And I just said, listen, I just don't see the upside here between or with Tyler Warren going forward.
Good player.
Having
a good rookie season. You guys are going to
situation.
like him long-term, but this, like, look, man, the ultimate worst run out for Colts and Colts fans and the way this played out with the injuries and everything that's happened to their team after a really, really good start and a great job by Shane Steichen coaching the team. So, all right, man. Really good stuff. Shout out again one more time, where folks can find all of your work, anything you may have coming, things you already got up for them to go check out and read, all that stuff.
Sure. So again, at Drake Fantasy on Twitter, Instagram, what are the kids on these days? I don't know. Snapface.
Snapface. You should invent that. That would work.
So yeah, and then I do the Fantasy Points podcast with John Hansen. That comes out every Monday. You can read my articles at Defensive Streamers at Fantasy Points. I've got articles coming out at The Huddle and Sports Kita. And then I just saw, while we were even recording this, one of my fun little videos popped up for Fantasy Pros. So I'm all over the place, all over the fantasy universes.
A man of many parts.
If you pay me, I'll show up and write an article for you.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on, as always. Like, it's like riding a bike. We just jump right back on together.
This is great.
The Fantasy Football Hustle, always near and dear to my heart. That's why I wore my Hustle shirt today.
I love it.
So appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Hope you have great holiday season. I will not be doing Talk Data to Me for the next 2 weeks. Going to be spending some time with the family. But good luck in your fantasy playoffs, and we will see you again in January. Take care, everybody.
And remember, never
get
out hustled.
Out hustled. That's right.